Hello, welcome to another edition of Razorwire. Now, today we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic. Some would say it's rather controversial. I don't think it's that controversial, but it is a conversation that needs to be had. And that is around data privacy. When it comes to artificial intelligence, when we plug our data into artificial intelligence to train that artificial intelligence in a variety of different formats, depending upon what it's there to do, what are the concerns that we have as information security people? Now, today I have two fantastic guests, one from the IT space who runs a company related to AI, and another person who's been on the channel before, who's an information security professional like myself. And we're going to be debating on this topic. What's good, what's bad, what's the pros, what's the cons, what's the ethical aspect behind it? How do we deal with AI and the data that we plug into this AI, and what concerns do we have within the community at large that we need to consider and feasibly fix in the future? So come with me on a journey and let's introduce our guests so we can move forward and have that chat. So in order to discuss the matters of AI and data privacy, which a lot of us have kind of thought about in the past, there's been a lot of discourse around the InfoSec community. I have two fantastic guests who are here to discuss this matter with us. We have the fantastic Amy Stokes Waters, and we also have Ryan, who's new, whereas Amy has been on here before. So shall we start with Ryan as an intro? Go on then, Ryan. Tell them who you are. What do you do?
Yes. So, hi everybody. My name is Ryan Mangan. I'm work in IT, and not such as the debate around cyber and IT. I'm sure this will come out through the conversation. But yeah, so I'm a chartered IT professional, chartered fellow at the British Computer Society and a Microsoft MVP, and do a lot of consulting. And recently, the last couple of years, I've been deep in the buckets of AI and some of the challenges associated with that.
Fantastic. And Amy?
Hello. I'm Amy Stokes Waters. I am the CEO of the Cyber Escape Room company, but I also work with Ryan as a non-exec director. So I am also now entrenched in the exciting world of AI. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've spoken a number of times on the channel about different aspects of AI. Is it good? Is it bad? What does it mean for the information security community? But I think one of the biggest sort of debates we've seen over the last year or so is kind of around that privacy element of artificial intelligence. What do we mean by that? We mean by, there's a lot of solutions that are coming out at the moment that say, we've got AI packed into it. It's powered by AI. Half of it is marketing rubbish. The other half of it is kind of like that forerunner of where we're going with AI. And I genuinely believe as a technology, AI is going to be a very, very big change in the way that we consume, technology going forward. It's going to change a lot of things. But one of the biggest concerns is over data privacy. Now, we've seen a lot of legislation coming out around data privacy from obviously the EU, from the States, and so on and so forth. But there's been, before we kind of jump into this debate, there's been two kind of clear things that have really kind of stood out in the last couple of months, really, in fact, maybe more than that. First one was, if we all remember, Adobe's change in their terms and conditions and the way that they implement their AI caused a bit of an outrage back in June. Basically around in the terms and conditions, they put that they would be utilizing any information that's put into their cloud to train the AI data models. Now, there was a lot of clients who were rather annoyed at this because, a lot of them are creatives. A lot of them don't want that kind of stuff to be reused and to be utilized, because it's content that they've created. It's stuff that they've put their creative thing into. And it's very similar to what kind of occurred with the Actors Guilds, late last year, where a lot of them went on strike because they thought that AI was going to take over their jobs. That's another matter, but very similar in relation. The other one was Clearview with their facial recognition technology. Now, that was a big one because our Dutch friends in their data protection authority decided that they were going to take some action there. And, well, needless to say, fines were chucked, and they were not small fines. in their direction. And I mean, that was more recent, but it leads to kind of a good standing point, the start point to this wider debate around data consent and AI training. What is the situation at this moment in time? Lots of people have concerns about their data being used inappropriately. Aspects of the data are going to be used to train models that is then going to be used for those organizations to make money off of the back of other people, or that they're going to misuse that information. Now, in InfoSec, we have the concept of data custodians, we have the concept of consumers, and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts on the kind of discussions that we're going with in this space at this moment in time? Who wants to begin?
Well, obviously I jump in first to every conversation ever. I personally think it's super... I think it's really interesting that we're actually having these conversations in the first place. So I think it's really positive that actually these things are coming out, and that there are court cases and legal action being taken against companies who are using data without consent. Because if you think 20 years ago, when people started shoving all the data into Facebook or whatever, that data has been used, is lost now to the world because people weren't standing up for it at the time it started happening. But I think if we can set the precedent now around, actually, no, we're not all right with AI taking everything, or you taking the data to put into your AI, because it's the same issue. It's just the implications, I guess, are a bit different. Like when we put data into Facebook then, I guess, thought they owned our data and started flogging it to people, like telesales companies do all the time. It's the same concept, but it's just the implications of those concepts are different because we're using AI. And I think if we'd have stood up to it 20 years ago, we probably wouldn't have as many issues with... I wouldn't have as many cold calls coming through, I can put it that way, with my number having been leaked several thousand times into many databases.
Absolutely. Ryan?
So I don't know how deep you want to go into this rabbit hole.
Go.
The old adage of... okay, fine, we will do. So the old adage of garbage in, garbage out, right? So everyone wants to use AI, but AI requires data. And this is actually quite cool in the sense of some kind of stuff. So if you give it bad data, you're going to get bad results. And there's a lot of papers we'll talk about the snowballing effect of hallucinations, and we'll go into that later on. But the biggest challenge you have as well is if you use AI to train AI, there's something called the model autophagy disorder, mad cow disease, where the AI effectively eats itself over a period of time. So the problem businesses have, and we're going to go back slightly, is we've always had this bit where people are trying to acquire our data. And this is why GDPR came out and all these rules came in to kind of really strengthen on that. I still get spammed to death now, and shouldn't be on these databases, but I am. And I have to go through that process to excuse my rights. But what's happening now is because they need this data and it needs to be fresh, it needs to be new, it needs to be specific, they're just rewriting the policies effectively in most cases and turning on by mandatory. So if you've got a subscription, all of a sudden this in privacy, this AI feature comes and it's already on. So they have this challenge internally that they need good data, but they need people to opt into it. So they're going to automatically opt you in. That's the first challenge. The second thing is that even though they're trying to kind of force these policies and privacies on you, for example, the ICO made a statement about LinkedIn. Has everybody seen that one? Where effectively the ICO said they were pleased with LinkedIn's suspension of AI training after the regulator raised concerns. And this was in September, around about the 20th, I think, if I remember rightly.
And we're going to say it's super interesting that they've revoked it for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft. But I tagged you in that thing on LinkedIn. I tagged you in that thing on LinkedIn the other day where Microsoft has automatically said that they're going to take your data out of like Word and Excel.
So do you want to go into that as well? Because that's, I looked into this. This is a false positive by Nixcraft. Nixcraft is like a Linux type of forum, type of Twitter. And what they were saying was, there's no proof of it, basically, is what I found. There's no proof that Microsoft are going to do this. But they were saying that you need to turn off these features because Microsoft will start collecting your data. They might collect telemetry on anonymized data, which is fine. But they're not collecting personal data or as anything to concern from what I can see. But they are right. Everybody's right to be concerned, because if you look at Slack did something as well at the beginning of the year. They turned around and said they're going to start automatically opting you in to train on your workspace. So all your files and data could potentially end up in AI, but you had to opt out. So there's this issue where everybody wants to protect the data, but then these companies want the AI data so that they can improve their services. But there needs to be kind of like a balance between, getting people's permission to use that data and what's acceptable and what's not. And I think at the moment there's a line. I remember Facebook, and I don't use it much anymore. You probably know that, Amy. I'm not a Facebook fan. I'm on there because my wife insists I need to be on there for family pictures, but I don't like using it. And I opted out, and it says that we may consider your application. And really, Meta needs to be accepting opt-out, not considering. And I think this is the sort of things which kind of make it a little bit interesting.
Once the data's in there, how are they unpicking it from the AI? So once you've put that data in there and it's being used, if the opt-in's automatic, so presumably your data's already been taken, you opt out, well, it's already been taken. So how are you getting it back out again?
This is the thing. So, but you've got these other situations in AI where you have like a large language model which is trained on questions and answers in mass. It takes days, weeks, and months, and you need a lot of juice to do that, supercomputers or whatever. You can do it in the cloud, but it's very costly as well. I believe Elon Musk is in that process at the moment, right? Where he's using Grok and Twitter to kind of build out his stuff. But the challenge you've got is, even if you train a model, it's still going to give you kind of not perfect information. You need to always give it source data. So a lot of people use stuff called RAG, which is basically a vector database, which is retrieval augmented kind of retrieval, where it effectively grabs some text based on a semantic search and then brings it back into the LLM for a question. And then there's context around that question, like a prompt, I want to draw this picture, but it needs to look fluffy, rainbows, unicorns, and all that kind of stuff. But I also need some context behind it. So from that perspective, there's a lot more to do than just train a model if you want to get accurate results. And we won't go down that rabbit hole. But the point I was trying to kind of get to was that people's rights should be respected. But also I understand the need for vendors to kind of get data to be able to do that. So, okay, if we look at other vendors in the software market, they can use existing data for the customer to help the customer, but that's going to be for the customer only. Public data, like Facebook, that's the issue.
I guess in many respects, it's all about data transparency and how you're going to use that data and all the rest of it. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's so many different kind of companies that want to use it. A lot of them have been in this kind of like, space for special social media for a long, long time. And they do bury it, when it comes to opting in or opting out. And I don't think they're that good at explaining what this actually means to a layman. I mean, if you're an information security professional or an IT person, you'll read through it and probably understand it. But if you're not in that space, it's going to be very difficult to understand what the implications are. Let alone find the option to opt out. I mean, they don't exactly make these opt out sections particularly easy to find because it's not in their interest, for that to do that. But then there are pros and cons when it comes to sharing data. On one side of the fence, you have people saying, yeah, but it goes against privacy. It's potentially taking IP, that kind of thing. But on the other side of the fence, it's like, well, this could actually, depending upon the data type, really benefit humanity in many different ways. We need data in order to be able to train that model, to be able to do what it's there to do. Look at medical data, very, very important, very, very personal. But with good sources of kind of sanitized data, it can work absolute miracles within the medical industry. You can analyze large data sets very, very quickly. You can find trends. You find all kinds of information that might actually help and benefit people going forward. But it's about getting that balance. It's something that both of you guys have said. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? We're obviously still in the very early days where the old social networks are grinding hard and heavy to kind of carry on making the money that they make from the data that we put in. But when you look at other kind of organizations who are actually looking to utilize it in a way that could benefit, okay, they probably want the payout as well. But, not everybody is going to utilize it in order to sell you the latest widget or gadget or whatever. What are your thoughts?
I've got a strong policy on personal data, if I'm honest with you. It's my data, it's my information. I should decide when and where it's used. That's pretty much my stance on anything with that. I've always been quite a private person in that sense. But you raised a good point about it's not the transparency element of it is people should have the option. If they choose to allow you to have that data, it should be very easy for them to make that choice. It shouldn't be difficult. And I think, a lot of these vendors, a lot of these organizations who want to use AI, if they were a bit more forthcoming, perhaps they might get a more positive response. And if they were very clear on what they were going to do, but it's not clear, they don't share exactly what they're going to do with it. They just want carte blanche in some respects. If you look at some of the kind of, that we're going to train AI, well, what are you going to use? If it's going to make my experience better to creating documents and it doesn't use any of my personal data, I might consider it. I suppose that's where one of the gaps is for me.
I think it's interesting about the Adobe thing. So I'm quite a creative person and I like coming up with my own shit. I'd be fuming if I I've made my own ChatGPT that talks a bit like me, so I can speed up my exceedingly quick already generation of marketing content. But I've made it so it sounds like me. But if someone, I had someone the other day say to me, "Can I use your ChatGPT?" And I was like, "No, because it sounds like me. I've made it to sound like me, so I don't want you using it because then there'll just be two of me." And I get with the whole Adobe thing. People don't want to be creating their own. I guess it is IP, but like creative IP, and then having other people copy it, because the whole fucking point of being in marketing is to try and differentiate yourself from other people. But in terms of the medical data, that makes total sense as to why you would want that. So it's really weird because like marketing stuff doesn't seem that confidential, but I would fucking hate it if someone started nicking all my ideas and then reusing them. But with my medical data, if it's anonymized, feel free to have it. Which, like in normal terms, you think it would be the other way around.
Well, this is it. If it saves lives, then why not? I mean, it's in many respects. I mean, it's not the same, but a lot of us have donor cards. Please feel free in the event that something happens to me. If I can't, if there's no hope for me, then take what I've got and give it to somebody else and let them live. When it comes to kind of medical data and that kind of real data, I do see there is a similarity with that. Yes, you have to anonymize it. I mean, we've all seen the most recent spat of attacks on healthcare institutions, and lots of ransomware has been kicking off. I mean, I was reading this morning in the news about how it was going a bit nuts, but there's a lot of legal repercussions that come out of a lot of the usage of this data. I mean, you look at HIPAA, for instance. I mean, if they start utilizing that medical data over in the States for, the benefit of other patients and what have you, you fall afoul of HIPAA. In the EU, you fall afoul of GDPR. There's a lot of legal jurisdiction as well, because it's like Microsoft is a US-based company. They do operate in Europe, but there's a bit of an argument when it comes to things like the Patriot Act and GDPR and so on and so forth of who is liable and what. It's a real minefield of legal issues, private issues, and sort of beneficial issues. There's so many variations when it comes to privacy in the AI space that it's really, really difficult to kind of nail it down. And then you have jurisdictions that may be utilizing, AI gathered data for other reasons. I'm not going to mention the countries where there may or may not be more or less freedoms when it comes to, personal information, but we also have that to consider as well. Where is this data jurisdiction going to lie? Who knows? You could have one law somewhere over in the States about how you treat, private information that's been trained in an AI model, but it won't apply, say, in China or the Middle East or somewhere like that.
Well, in America, they are collecting menstrual tracking information so they can prosecute people who are getting abortions.
What?
In some of the states, so people are being told not to put information about the menstrual cycle into their phones, which is what a lot of women use to track it, because the companies are selling that data to organizations. I mean, I'm not. This is what I've read on the internet. I've not checked the veracity of it, but this is some of the concerns that people are having in America. So if those are the concerns in America, yes, what are the concerns in places where there are fewer freedoms around your health information? Because they do have HIPAA over there, but clearly it's a concern for people.
As the thing is, as well, and we're going back into the topic of security. is let's say that everybody was on board and you can have my data and train it. What happens if someone gains access to that data? It kind of, we're going around in circles. It's a very much a circular argument, isn't it, with data protection and data, and kind of privacy. And you mentioned about medical using for kind of the force of good. But interestingly, that's been around forever. Journals, people who want to kind of go forward for early testing, as long as people opt for it, it's kind of it's fine. I don't get involved in the politics side of the world, but there's lots of talk about far left, far right, and indifferent. Facial recognition and AI and all that kind of stuff could be used in a negative way, which can have issues for the general public as well. So there's so much to cover, but the problem is, and it's always the same, is technology is going faster than lawmakers and policymakers can kind of keep up at the moment. I think that is the problem. But then there's a blend of being able to kind of maintain progression, but there's also that level of what is acceptable and what's not. And like you just said, Amy, if that is the case, that is totally unacceptable.
It's not just lawmakers, it's like policy within your own organisation as well. Like, how many organisations out there actually have a policy on the use of AI for their employees? It's not many.
We do.
I mean, I'm sure it's a bit...
You're an AI company.
But I think I can't imagine... I mean, I'm sure some of the bigger ones have started going there, right? But I can't imagine most small businesses have got policies in place for that. And I can guarantee that people within those small businesses are 100% uploading customer confidential information to ChatGPT to go, oh, help us rewrite this email, or help me rewrite this document, or run the numbers in this spreadsheet or whatever, because it's really fucking easy to do. I use ChatGPT all the time. We don't store any personal information about customers other than an email address. That didn't go into ChatGPT. I'm using it for marketing shit, right? But we don't have a policy on it. I would hope that the people who work for me would know not to fucking use it for that shit. But yeah, if you're watching, don't fucking do it. But yeah, but I don't think most small businesses are prepared for that. So how much data has already been lost just because not because there's no law in place, but because there's no policy, which should be faster to implement than an entire legal system.
But then there's also the argument of it depends on the organisation that you're talking about in that small, medium space. If they're a legal firm, for instance, they may understand, that AI is something to do with the SaaS solution that they utilise, but they won't know the intrinsic detail behind it. Same with insurance firms and all the rest of it. There's a lot of this that's being baked into. See, for a long time now, we've been going down this software as a service model. First it was, pieces of tin in a data center. Then it was kind of virtualization, which made things a lot cheaper. And then it became kind of software as a service, which meant you didn't have to host your applications. They'd be hosted for you. And then we were concerned about the data of those, the data security of those third parties, and it's just been progressing down this route. And one of the concerns I have is that security, and it's something that you guys mentioned earlier on, actually, it hasn't been thought about at the beginning of the technological advancement and kind of got hammered in somewhere down the line. We don't know who people are selling access to the any AI at this moment in time. I mean, if somebody came to an organization who, I don't know, dealt with marketing characteristics of a demographic, and they say, yes, we sanitize the data. You don't know that they're sanitizing the data. They can sell it to anyone. And as you all pointed out, GDPR has done bugger all to prevent me from constantly getting messages from people who've bought data sets with my details in. Made even worse by the fact that I'm on a bleeding podcast. Trust me on this one. I'm obviously on some AI ranking list of, this guy wants all the stuff. Hence why my poor PA spends most of the time getting rid of emails. And it's sometimes hard to actually find legitimate emails in my email set because it's getting so bad.
I've literally blocked any number that's not saved in my phone. My phone doesn't ring anymore, which I'm sure I miss loads of thousands of pounds worth of business out of the back of. I'm like, you'll text, if it's important, you'll text me.
To be honest, I'm of a similar vein. The amount of recruitment agents I get calling me up who've, obviously harvested my data from somewhere and I've never spoken to in the past at all. And I think, AI is just going to make it harder and harder and harder. I mean, there's so many benefits. Look at it this way, and I've posited this before. Training an AI in security is going to make our job as information security professionals so much better in many ways. We can correlate events. We can, it'll be trained on things that it's seen elsewhere that it can then help you protect your own environment from, But then, where's it getting that data from? Are those companies happy for it to be shared? Most of them probably won't be. So it's going to be very difficult to create a companion AI to do what we want to do on our day-to-day basis that isn't going to be mired in controversy over who and what and where it came from. Because as Ryan said, crap data going in produces a crap AI. Well, hopefully it hasn't been trained on crap data, but you can't validate that.
Well, if you look at Microsoft Graph, which is the thing that sits behind all the Microsoft products, that does exactly that. So it picks up, oh shit, phishing email came in to this inbox in, I don't know, London. But actually, the same phishing emails in a totally different company in a totally different country over there. It can still pull the information, it can still pull that phishing email out of that inbox because it's connected. But the data that's going into Microsoft, presumably when you hit that button that says, do you want to send the telemetry back, then that's where it's picking that data up from. But because Microsoft's got such a big reach, then they've got enough data points. But small businesses that are coming out, yes, I agree. Where are they getting the data from? Ryan, where are you getting your data from?
Yeah, where are you getting your data from, Ryan?
Homegrown.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Public information is the good one. I can't talk about partnerships, but there will be a partnership with a potential publisher in due course as well. But that's how we're going down that route. But yeah, and the thing is, when you talk about, I keep going about personal data, I'm not really interested in the personal data. People are like, what? I'm not interested at all. I'm more about the source of information and then asking questions on that rather than people's information. I mean, if you ask 10,000 people, can you create me 3 questions on a topic? How many of them will be the same? That is the question. How many people are going to ask the same question? And it's not going to be that high. Everybody's got different things that they do in different areas, and different kind of style, perspective on life. So, humans, everybody's individual, independent in that sense. Well, hopefully. So it's always going to be different. So for me, and on what we're doing and what I'm doing with Amy, we're not really interested in personal data. And if we were to kind of look at questions, we'd anonymize them and redact any sensitive information before we did it. And we'd also notify people that, because once you've redacted it, anonymized it, it has no bearing on that person anymore either. So it's completely sanitized. And I think, that's what they should be looking at. They should be saying that we're going to sanitize the data. We're going to make sure it's completely clean. We're going to just do that. But unfortunately, a lot of these organizations haven't said that.
Yeah, I mean, we've just built that digital escape room, and as part of the MVP, I've built into it that at the end of it, it says, you've given me a lot of data throughout the course of this. Thanks. Now I'm going to redact it all. And it redacts. And there's the spreadsheet that I've got in the background that powers it. Yeah, it is powered by a spreadsheet. That's how it works.
Amy, just to go on a record, I've got to shoot you down halfway through. You say you're not technical, but you've built a digital escape room. You're talking about Microsoft Graph, and you know lots about it. So I think you're a little bit technical, regardless of what you say.
My producer said we needed more arguments in this kind of space. So, carry on. It's all about ethics. All of this is about ethics. We're kind of relying on the ethics of other people, aren't we? Let's face it. They're not going to utilize the AI or whatever's put in. I mean, there's a receptacle of knowledge. I mean, look at it from an educational point of view. AIs can be trained in the cumulative knowledge of the human race that's been publicly available, from physics through to biology, through to all kinds of things.
And Jim, it has been trained on that, and it's still racist and sexist.
Well, yeah, obviously, they need to work on a few of the kinks there, I believe. But at the end of the day, from a perspective, if you want to learn about black holes, what's the cumulative knowledge that we have on black holes? It'd be a fantastic way of up and coming physicists to learn very quickly, very astutely. I'm an old man. When I learned when I was young, many moons ago, I had to go to a bloody library. I remember a time without the internet, for Christ's sake, and finding decent books down a library on any subject matter, that isn't 90 years old, or, maybe not 90 years old, but old and out of date. It's horrendous. Then the internet comes along and we can start communicating really quickly. And as technology has gone on, we've started developing this artificial intelligence, which, let's face it, search engines are going to be dead. Why would you need one? I barely use one now.
Then it's like the veracity of the information, though. So there was a case where someone had asked it some questions about illegal cases, and it just made some up. So
It made it
Not
up.
recommended.
like there weren't real cases. It had just amalgamated information from various sources and made up these legal cases, which then actually got presented by a lawyer in a court, and the rest of the court were like, that never happened. That's not a thing.
But isn't that bad programming of the AI to not make something up? You know, if you ask it, what are the pertinent points from these sets of cases?
But now AI can search the internet. So if it's just looking on the internet, then the internet's full, like 90% of the internet is crap.
Yes, okay. Admittedly, a large chunk of it is for a certain type of thing that hasn't changed since the late 90s. Let's be honest. But again, you know, what did they ask? You know, there's a certain element of that as well. Did they know how to ask?
Yeah, it's good because you're right, Jim. Because basically, if you ask it's like garbage in, garbage out. We're going back in circles again, circular conversation. If you ask loads of kind of narrow questions, it's going to give it a lot of room for different parameters. It's basically patterns, right? It's going to look at patterns and try and pull things through. So if you ask a really good question, have you guys heard of CoStar, by the way?
Why does that ring a bell?
So CoStar is a style of creating prompts to ask questions in AI. And a lady in Singapore entered a competition on prompting. It's not something I'd do at the weekend, guys, by the way, just to make that clear. But a lady entered the competition and she won. In Singapore, it was this global event, won. And the reason why she said she won was I think she found it, adopted the CoStar method of going through and, you know, filling out the context of the question, style, and all this kind of stuff inside the body of the question. And it was, you know, obviously be quite a meaty question, but the results were really good. Whereas if I say, what is the meaning of life? God knows what that says on the response, but it kind of gives you a lot of room to wiggle with. And I think it's the same when you talk about legal, you know, law is shades of gray. So unless you're very, very clear on a very specific thing, it's not going to be able to pin it down as well. Because again, we're not at this reasoning standard of AI. We're still on the early layer of conversational AI. The next step will be reasoning, where it has a level of ability, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm using GPT-01 preview of 01, and that, like, the jump in how clever it is from 4.0 to 01, I was like, my mind was blown by, like, just the next.
It's not clever. This is the thing, Amy. It's a perception. So they call it strawberry, as they spoke about. All it is they've actually improved the chain of thought process. This is what I believe anyway. I might be wrong, but technically that's what they've done, because I've been able to do similar sort of things elsewhere. And what they do is they basically get it to, and when you run that question, right, Amy, you see that it starts telling you it's doing things. And it's going through this stage process. So it does all of that. But what it's doing is it's questioning itself, and you can do like a workflow, and it can go through that workflow. And that's why the answers are better, but it's still 4.0, in my opinion, just with a little bit of advanced processing. But the charging you well, it depends on your plan, but if you're using APIs, they charge you a pretty penny to use it. So, but it is an advancement, but it's not reasoning where it can actually think on its own, if that makes sense.
I think one of the key concerns that I have around the usage of data within AIs is the representation of that data. Because, you know, there's this old kind of story of, you know, history is written by the victors, okay? And that gets kind of changed over time. And then, you know, the reality of the situation and the way that people feel about things change. I'm not saying if it's right, I'm not saying if it's wrong or whatever. But I think, you know, the danger I see with AI and the usage of data within AI is it has to represent the facts of what happened. It's down to people to represent what that actually means. You know, you can't change history. You can't change the way things have happened in history. It's not for AI to decide, in my opinion, how that has changed, you know. And I don't want to go into the politics, and so I'm being very careful. But it should represent what the historical facts are, what the facts of certain kind of areas of science is, and all the rest of it. And it's down for, in my opinion, the person to interpret what that actually means from an ethical point of view. I don't believe that AI should be making any decisions on what we should see and what we shouldn't see. It should represent everything equally. It's like any database.
It's like going back, if you go back to history class and you look at primary and secondary sources, you have to consider, what is it, like the motive behind those sources. Like you said, history is written by the victors. So you've got to look at AI and go, it was just another source of information. It's not going to tell you the whole truth. But we think it can see everything, but it can't see everything. No. And people, and because people are saying, no, don't take my data. So it's not going to get a full picture then, is it? Because there'll be some subsets of people who are like, no, don't take any data from us. I'm sure North Korea is not feeding loads of information into ChatGPT. So he's not getting a full picture. So we can sit there and pretend it's some omniscient being, which is what I think a lot of people consider ChatGPT and that kind of thing to be. But it's not. It's just a search engine. It's just another form of information. It's just another Google. And you've got to take it with a pinch of salt what it tells you. I mean, a lot of the time it will be right, but it's not, like you said, it's not the full picture.
But the problem there is Google have been, and I'm going to probably get beaten up now because we're going on YouTube with this one. The people that you mentioned, the organisation that you mentioned, has been found in the past to prioritise and deprioritise based off political view and not based off of the representation of truth.
We have to remember that all these AI companies are owned by someone who's got their own political views. So ChatGPT, let's guess which side of the fence that one's gonna go on.
It's incredibly easy to put bias into an AI. You can do marketing bias and all sorts of things. And I think we'll start seeing that in the years to come, where if someone supports a certain product type, you might see that level of marketing come through the AI.
If I ask ChatGPT what's the best car on the market, I wonder what it'll come back and tell me.
Not a Tesla.
Weird.
Well, no, you make a good point. I mean, there's been a lot of controversy around that relationship with that particular original founder and the current, individuals managing ChatGPT. And the problem there is you then get to the question of you start questioning the validity of the data and the validity of the responses because of that relationship. There is the potential there for bias to be put in and to be programmed in. And I guess that's the biggest concern I have. I'm an individual who likes to be given all the facts, good and bad, and make my own decision based off of the end of that, whether an action was good, whether an action was bad, and there's plenty of times in history when we can kind of go over and we could probably argue quite extensively. I mean, I, for one, think that AI is going to completely rewrite the way that we utilize technology and the way that we consume technology. And I think we're in a very dangerous space, which has been echoed by a lot of other people as well. It's not just me that's come up with this. Whether you agree with their politics or their ethics or whatever, for whatever reason, there's been a lot of people who've said, no, this is actually quite a dangerous technology and we need to be really careful how we implement it. Because if we do plug it into all the information that was ever created and it does decide to suddenly become self-aware, I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords, I'd like to point out, because this will no doubt be a video that will be reviewed at some point by some artificial intelligence. Just wanted to clarify that.
I imagine that there will be, if there's not already, there will be very soon a service that compares the AI. So you can ask it a question and it'll come back with I don't know, Bard, GPT and Copilot's answers, and you can sit there and go, right, which one am I picking today? Because they'll all have their own little biases in, and one of them will have a subset of information that it might need to contextualize the question.
Let's look to the future then. What do you think is going to be the future of privacy with AI? I mean, we are basically at a point where we realize there's a problem. We've talked about the fact that there's a problem, not just us, a lot of other people. There's a lot of people really, really worried about this. Where do you think it's going to go? And I know that that's a very expansive question, but for final thoughts before we kind of come to the end of this, what's the future here as you see it at the moment, and where do you think this is going to go?
For me, here's a little bit, I think AI, and Amy said it's good, so we're on the same page in that sense. I think that AI is a massive power for good in the sense that, there's going to be, IDC said that by 2027, there's going to be over 10 million IT professionals, like shortage of. So that's a big, big gap. And as we keep, developing and building new technology, the kind of number of skills, to kind of build cloud, Azure, security is growing and growing and growing. Back in the day, you just needed a Windows Server 2000 manual or a Windows XP manual. Now you need about 55,000 books to kind of go through various topics. So AI, what it does in terms of benefit is it reduces the cognitive impact on that individual. It allows organizations to maintain, retain, but also do more with the time they've got. So by using AI, like knowledge systems or going through, KBs or analyzing security logs, finding errors in switches, it takes this massive burden of pressure off that individual cognitively. So, it takes the pressure and the strain off that individual. So that's a massive benefit. And there's questions. There's always problems with something. When electric cars first came to town, hydrogen cars, they might explode while you're driving it. There's all of these issues out there in the world today. So my view is that they've got to be worked through, but everybody who's building AI, including myself, need to be kind of, cognizant of them issues and try and make sure that they protect the users' privacy and their data whilst building these technologies.
I think there's the whole education piece that needs to happen with the general public. So explain to them, you can opt out of this stuff. There are buttons you can push. And I think we talked about earlier, it needs to be made easier. But then the legislation needs to come in that puts the onus back on the AI companies to protect that data. I think we'll see legislation coming in, but I think we'll also see a proliferation of end user education around it. Hopefully.
I think the one question I have there, and I mean, these were final thoughts, I don't normally get involved there, but you make a good point. Do you think that our current politicians, let's be really honest here, have the mental capability of actually understanding this technology, what it's worth, what it's due? And I'm talking about some of their advisors as well, because I've met some of these people and they're away with the fairies. I mean, I'm not going to get into political stuff, but let's be honest.
They're the ones that will be putting confidential information into ChatGPT saying, can you write me a policy? Yes. So, no, I don't think they do. No, I think, I don't know how we fix that bit, but I do think there will need to be some legislation around it. How we're going to teach the lawmakers about the implications of it, that's a whole other, there's a whole other podcast in that, I think.
Well, there is. I mean, there's a much wider podcast on that one, and maybe that's one we'll have to sit down and discuss because, I think this technology is rapidly outpacing us as a species. I think it's going to dramatically change the way that we learn. I think it's going to, if it's not carefully done, then you're going to have very highly trained AI to provide a narrative that's beneficial to the people who are in control of that AI, which I find probably the most worrisome thing. An AI created over in, a place with a large wall that was built to keep out the Mongols, for instance, are going to have very different ways that they're going to train their AI about how it benefits their local populace than potentially over in the States or somewhere over in, Russia or, in the Middle East. All of these different places have very different ways of thinking. They have very different ways of agendas.
I think if we keep thinking about AI as the be-all and end-all of knowledge, we're going to slowly erode our own ability to think for ourselves because people rely so fucking heavily on it.
Well, see, I'm going to get this thing stuck in the back of my head called Neuralink, and then I can become one with it.
The thing is, Amy, in my view, remember when, the Nokia 3310 or the big thing with the antennas on before then, the Motorola's, people just actually have conversations. And now when you go to dinner, the kids are on the tablets, you have to take them off, It's almost like it's a progression of the use of technology. I don't think it, I think it's, I kind of think it's how we manage it. I think there's going to be this change. You have to accept the change to a certain extent, but it's also how we deal with it in culture and obviously in the social aspect as well. Because I won't go into details of it today, but AI girlfriends and boyfriends and other, it's, you can do anything these days. It's not my cup of tea, but everybody's got their own preference.
Yeah.
There's a whole group of men, for good example, over in Japan now, where there's a real concern about loneliness, who are finding solace in AI girlfriends. And those AI girlfriends are learning about what those individuals' likes and making it so they don't need to go anywhere else. They don't want to.
That sounds like a disaster for the amount of personal data they're giving away.
Well, it's a disaster for a number of...
Their targeted ads must be really specific.
Well, absolutely. I'm sure that marketing data is being reused, that they're teaching the AI. But I mean, there's a wider implications. You've got a whole group of individuals who are not going to be going out and making the next generation of individuals. There's a lot of problems around this technology. I mean, data privacy is just one of them. Data privacy, I think, if we can get how we sanitize data down and try to collectively agree on it, I think we can then utilize at least AI for serious beneficials with things like nanotechnology for medical healthcare, being able to generate new medicines, new techniques in order to kind of assist in getting rid of some of the crap part of being a human, in the fact that your body breaks down. There's a lot of horrible diseases, for instance, that we could really use that technology to help with. But as you say, if you're, the amount of marketing is probably going to explode pretty horribly, and I get enough of it as it is. I don't know how I'm going to cope when I stick the chip in my head and join the one true AI. I'll become part of the marketing problem. We joke about it. But anyway, our time has come to an end, and I think this is a much wider topic of discussion. I think the conversation of AI is very popular on this channel. That and burnout. I don't know if there's any kind of correlation we can do there, but
less burnout, more AI.
Yeah,
maybe.
Don't need it then. You just you can do more with more chips in your head. There you go. Absolute pleasure to have you guys on board. It's really good to debate this kind of thing, and we need to have more debate about this in the community. And I think, it's because we're going to see a lot more discussions at a lot more events and what have you with regards to this particular stuff. And to all you out there who are kind of watching this, if you've got any comments or you've got anything that you want to DM, I get a lot of DMs. I don't get a lot of people commenting because I think people get worried about commenting, in the big wide world where other people can have a lot of disagreements. It tends to happen in a lot of other types of channels, and it's great that it doesn't happen here. But if you've got anything that you want us to cover, then just DM me, email me, whatever. My data's out there being run by some AI. You could probably ask ChatGPT what my email address is, and it'll tell you. Amy, you have an events thing that I'm sure you probably want to plug. Do you want to do a quick plug for that?
Oh, for fuck's sake. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's actually the name of the thing.
That is the name of it. Well, yeah, we named it that because I thought if we start bringing out more events, people will look at them and go, oh, for fuck's sake, another event. So it's just getting the marketing in people's brains automatically. So we will be running 4 conferences next year, 2 in South Africa, 2 in the UK. The dates have yet to be confirmed, but you can find us on LinkedIn, OFFS, and you can find us on the internet, oh-ffs.com.
Fantastic. And Ryan, if they want to find you in your organisation, how do they find you?
Yeah, so it's Efficient Ether. So I built the AI, which is an IT professionals, IT security technical assistant called Ether Assist. So that's etherassist.ai.
Fantastic. And thank you to everybody watching this. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you again soon. In addition, I do have a book recently come out, the Cyber Sentinels Handbook, a primer for information security professionals. Now, this book is very much geared up towards professionals at all levels of their career, be they starters, be they newcomers, be they people who've been in it for a little while and maybe looking for a little bit more direction, albeit the older ones looking to maybe reground themselves in some of the more important aspects of the trade that maybe they've forgotten over time. I've had lots of good feedback from a lot of different readers of lots of different levels, so please feel free to get yourselves a copy. We've got the e-copy, we've also got the paperback copy, and if you don't want to spend any money, you can go on Kindle Unlimited and read the book for free there as well. So thank you ever so much again. Look after yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon.